I'm Ryan O'Doud, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we continue with Section 9.4, The Incarnation of Ahriman, by Rudolph Steiner. We're picking up in Lecture 2. One of the means is to prevent awareness of the actual significance for human beings of certain kinds of thought and conception which predominate in modern times. You will recall the great difference between the way people felt themselves embedded within the whole cosmos in the Egyptian age, let us say, and even in Greek times, and how they have felt since the beginning of the modern age, since the close of the Middle Ages. Picture to yourselves a well-instructed ancient Egyptian. He knew that his body was constituted not merely of the substances which exist here on earth and are embodied in the animal, plant, and mineral kingdoms, but that the forces which he saw in the stars above also worked upon him. He felt himself to be part of the whole cosmos. He felt the whole cosmos not only full of life, but ensouled and imbued with spirit. In his consciousness there lived something of the spiritual beings of the cosmos, of the soul nature of the cosmos and its life. All this has been lost in the course of the modern era. Today, gazing up from Earth to the star world, it appears filled with fixed stars, suns and planets, comets, and so on. But with what means do modern human beings examine all that looks down on them out of the cosmic space? They examine it with mathematics, with the science of mathematics. What lies around the earth is robbed of spirit, robbed of soul, even of life. It's a great mechanism, in fact, only to be grasped by the aid of mathematical mechanistic laws. With the help of these mathematical mechanistic laws, we grasp it magnificently. A student of spiritual science is undoubtedly excellently placed to value the achievements of a Galileo, a Kepler, and others, but what penetrates human understanding and consciousness through the tenets of these great spirits in human evolution merely shows the universe as a great mechanism. What this means is only apparent to someone who is able to grasp the full nature of the human being. It's all very well for astronomers and astrophysicists to present the universe as a mechanism which can be understood and calculated by a mathematical formulae. This indeed is what people may believe between waking in the morning until they fall asleep again at night. But in those unconscious depths which they do not reach during waking consciousness, but which are an intrinsic part of our existence nevertheless, and in which we live between going to sleep and waking, a different knowledge of the universe flows into the human soul. The soul possesses a knowledge which, although unknown to waking consciousness, is yet present in the depths and molds it, a knowledge of the spirit, of the life of the soul, of the life of the cosmos. And although in waking consciousness people know nothing of what goes on, they are in communication with the spirit, soul, and life of the universe while they sleep. These things are there in the soul and live within it. And much of the great discord felt by modern humanity is caused by the disharmony between what the soul experiences and what waking consciousness acknowledges as its view of the world. And what does the whole spirit and approach of anthroposophical spiritual science say about such things? What the ideas of Galileo and Copernicus have brought to mankind, it says, is grand and mighty, but not an absolute truth, by no means an absolute truth. It is one aspect of the universe, one particular perspective. It is only modern arrogance that enables people today to view the Ptolemaic universe as mere childishness. We have made such great strides, they say, of astronomical proportions, and we now consider our view as absolute truth. It is just as little an absolute as the Ptolemaic system was an absolute, and is only one aspect. The only complete view, according to spiritual science, is to realize that all that people nowadays accept in the form of mere mathematical universalism, one might say a merely schematic and mechanical world order, does not furnish us with absolute truth about the universe, but with illusions. The illusions are necessary because mankind goes through varied forms of education in its different stages of evolution. For modern education, we need these illusions of a mathematical nature about the universe. We must acquire them, but we must know that they are illusions. And most of all, they are illusions when we transpose them into our daily environment, when, in accordance with atomic or molecular theories, we even endeavor to create a kind of microscopic astronomy of the Earth's substances. A right attitude in regard to the whole of modern science, insofar as it thinks along these lines, will recognize that its knowledge is illusion. Now, in order that his incarnation may take the most profitable form, it is of the utmost interest in Ahriman that people should perfect themselves in all our illusory modern science, but without knowing that it is illusion. Ahriman has the greatest possible interest in instructing human beings in mathematics, but not in instructing them that mathematical mechanistic concepts of the universe are merely illusions. He is intensely interested in teaching us concepts of chemistry, physics, biology, and so on, as they are presented today in all their remarkable effects, and in making us believe that these are absolute truths, not that they are only points of view, like photographs taken from one side only. If you photograph a tree from one side, it can be a true likeness, yet it does not give a picture of the whole tree as can be gained from photographing it from four sides. Ahriman has the greatest interest in concealing from mankind that in the modern intellectual rationalistic science and superstitious empiricism one is dealing with a great illusion, a deception. It would be a triumph for him if the scientific superstition which infiltrates all areas of life today, and which human beings even try to use as a template for the social sciences, should prevail into the third millennium. He would have the greatest success if he could then arrive in Western civilization in human form and find the scientific superstition as prevailing dogma. But I ask you not to draw false conclusions from what I have just said. It would be a false conclusion to avoid modern science. That would be a complete misapprehension. We must get to know science and gain an exact knowledge of all that this sphere involves, but with the full consciousness that we are receiving an illusory aspect, an illusion necessary for our education as human beings. We do not safeguard ourselves against Ahriman by avoiding modern science, but by learning to know its character. For modern science gives us an external illusion of the universe, and we need this illusion. Do not imagine that we do not see it, need it. But we must also extend it from quite another direction, filling it with actual reality gained through spiritual research. We must rise from illusory character to true reality. You will find reference to this in many of my lecture courses, and you will see how efforts have been made everywhere to enter fully into the science of our time, but to lift it all to the sphere where one can see its real value. You cannot wish a rainbow to vanish just because you know it to be an illusion of light and color. You will not understand it if you do not realize its illusory character. But the same thing applies to the picture of the universe derived from modern science, whose illusory nature must be recognized. It's by educating oneself through these illusions that one arrives at the reality. This then represents one of the means used by Ahriman to make his incarnation as effective as possible, this maintaining of scientific superstitions. The second means that he employs is to stir up all the emotions that fragment people into small groups that attack one another. You need only look at all the conflicting groups and interests that exist today, and you are unprejudiced. You will recognize that the explanation for this is not to be found in human nature alone. If people honestly try to explain this so-called universal warfare through human disharmonies, they will realize that it cannot, in fact, be attributed to physical humanity. It's precisely here that supersensible powers, Ahrimanic powers, have been at work. These Ahrimanic powers are working, in fact, wherever disharmonies arise between groups of people. Let us examine more closely what underlies this. Let us proceed from a very characteristic example. The modern proletariat had its Karl Marx. Observe closely how the doctrines of Karl Marx have spread amongst the proletariat, spawning vast amounts of Marxist literature. You will find all the methods of modern science used in that books. Everything is strictly proved, so strictly that many people, including the unlikeliest, have succumbed to Marxism. What was the actual destiny of Marxism? It spread at first, as you know, among the proletariat and was firmly rejected by university science. Today there are a number of university scientists who have veered round to acknowledging Marxist logic. They propound it because its literature has shown its conclusions are logically consistent, that, from the perspective of modern science, Marxism can be quite neatly proved. Middle-class circles have unfortunately had no Karl Marx, who could have proved the opposite for them, for just as one can prove the ideological character of right morality and so forth, the theory of surplus value materialistic historical research from the Marxist standpoint, so is it possible to prove their exact opposite. Middle-class bourgeois Marx would be perfectly capable of proving the exact opposite by the same strict method. There is no sort of swindle or humbug about it. The proof would be absolutely logical. What is this due to? It arises from the fact that present human thinking, the modern intellect, lies in the stratum of existence where it does not reach down to realities. One can therefore prove something quite strictly, and also prove its opposite. It's possible today to prove spiritualism on the one hand and materialism on the other. And people may combat each other from equally good standpoints because modern intellectualism is the upper layer of reality and does not plumb the depths of reality. And it is the same with partisan views. Someone who does not look deeper but simply lets himself be absorbed into a certain partisan group, by reason of his education, heredity, life of circumstances, and nationality, quite honestly believes, or so he thinks, in the possibility of proving the tenets of the group into which he has slipped. And then he fights against someone else who has slipped into another partisan group. And the one is just as right as the other. This creates chaos and confusion in mankind and will gradually become even greater until people see through it. Ahriman makes use of this confusion in order to prepare the triumph of his incarnation and to drive people increasingly into something they find so difficult to be aware of, that intellectual or modern scientific reasoning can be used nowadays both to prove something and equally well to prove its opposite. The important point for us to recognize is that everything can be proved, and for that reason we must examine the proofs presented by modern science. It is only in natural science that reality is demonstrated by the facts. In no other field can one consider intellectual proofs valid. The only way to escape the danger that threatens it, if one accepts the lures of Ahriman and his desire to drive people deeper and deeper into the things, is to realize through anthroposophical spiritual science that human knowledge must be sought for in a stratum deeper than that of the validity of proofs. And so, in order to create dispute and dissent, Ahriman also makes use of everything arising from the old conditions of heredity, which human beings have really outgrown in the fifth post-Atlantean epoch. The Ahrimanic powers use everything that is derived from old circumstances of heredity in order to sow conflict between different groups. All that comes from old divisions of family, race, tribes, peoples is used by Ahriman to create confusion. Freedom for every nation, even the smallest. These were fine-sounding words. But the powers hostile to man always use fine words in order to sow confusion, and in order to attain the things that Ahriman wishes to attain for his incarnation. Let's conclude section 9.4 of The Incarnation of Ahriman by Rudolph Steiner. Next week, we'll pick up with section 9.5, which will be the end of lecture 2. I will see you then. Olam.